Hey folks, Roland at PCAM here, and I just wanted to do another one of our tech tutorials. I'm going to do 7 of my favorite tips for Premiere Pro, just so we can make it real clickbaity. I was actually looking on the internet for somebody else's post or tutorial like this that I could just link to, but I kept finding videos that had maybe 3 or 4 of my favorite ones, but not all of them, so I just figured I'd make my own. But as an aside, my advice is, if you're an aspiring editor out there, if you come across any of those top Premiere tips, videos, blog posts, whatever, just click on all of them. And they almost all have the same ones in there, but there might just be one that completely changes everything for you, so they're worth watching. That's my advice. Hopefully I've got 1 or 2 in here for you like that too. Okay, let's jump right in here, and tip number 1 is to use enable and disable. So if you're going through an edit and you decide that you think you don't need a clip anymore here, in this case, I was gonna cut away to the screen capture that I did, but I decided I really didn't need it. I just wanted to stay on me. Now I could delete the clip like that, but if I ever decide I wanna get it back at some point, it's gonna be a real pain in the butt. So instead, I can highlight this clip, I can right click it, and I can just uncheck enable. And you'll see it changes color here. It kind of just disappears as if it's not even in the project, but of course it is. And I can easily at any point click it and re-enable it. This has changed so much for me about how I edit, and it took me a while before I discovered this tip, so it's near and dear to my heart. I even use it so much that I've mapped a specific keyboard shortcut to it, which is the E key, and I just tap that key all day long while I'm editing. I turn clips on and off. We're gonna get into keyboard shortcuts and how you can map them to what you want a little bit later, but for me and my keyboard, that E key is almost worn down to the point where you can't even read the letter anymore. That's how much I use enable, disable. Okay, moving along, tip number 2. That is color coding, and you can actually get a pretty good visual here if you look at my timeline and see how I'm using color coding to help me edit. So color coding is one of those ones where it's really important to do at the outset. If you change the color of a clip later, when it's already on the timeline, it's not gonna reflect that color on the timeline. So you gotta do it when you first bring in your clips. So for me, I have a specific color code that I use. I use shades of blue for all my A-roll main interview clips. I use shades of yellow and orange for all my B-roll clips. So when I first bring a clip in this case, here are all my main recordings. I can right-click all those or control-click and then go to label, and I can pick a color I want here. In this case, I picked cerulean for my main, that's this light blue. Now, Premiere doesn't actually show you what the colors look like, which is a total bummer, so you have to kind of just get used to them. Some of them are obviously more self-explanatory than others. Okay, tip number 3, and that is using paste and remove attributes. This is one of my favorite. So if you have a clip where you've made some adjustments to it, like you've tweaked the color or the sound or something like that. So let's say I've made all the tweaks to this clip, but now it's just on this very first clip in the timeline. It's not on all the other clips here. To actually get it on all the other times that I show up, I would have to continually add these clips and make those tweaks over and over again. But instead, we can use paste attributes. So if I highlight this first clip that has the attributes I like, I can click Edit and Copy or Command C. Then I can select all the other clips I want to paste this onto. We don't need to paste it onto Jeff's outro at the end. That's the only one maybe I would not do here. And again, that color coding was a great way for me to be able to tell. But for all the other times that I show up on video, now I've selected them and I can go back to edit and I can say paste attributes. And now it's gonna ask me what all do I wanna paste? And I can kind of be selective. Maybe I want the Lumetri color that fixes when that sun went behind a cloud, but I don't want what I did on the 3-way color corrector. Then I click OK, and it adds that to all these clips. Let's say you did what I just did, which is accidentally add filters twice to a clip. We can actually highlight all of them and say edit, remove attributes, and now we can go in and see that we can get rid of what we don't want. Things like motion, maybe if you made opacity changes or you put something in slow motion, you can get rid of whatever you want and uncheck what you don't want to get rid of. You click OK, it removes it. So the pasting and removing attributes is so useful. And again, it's one that I use so much that I actually mapped keyboard shortcuts to it, so I didn't have to go up into edit or right click and try to find paste attributes. So that's a great segue into tip number 4, and that is using keyboard shortcuts. So we can go to Premiere Pro, the Premiere Pro menu, and go to keyboard shortcuts here. And there's a couple great things about this. One is there's a search function where we can just look up any action and see if there's already a keyboard shortcut attached to it. So how about the razor tool? I use that a lot. Is there already one assigned? Oh yeah, so if I start typing in razor, it'll pop up and it'll tell me that it's the C key already. So that's a quick way you can see, is there something already assigned in Premiere? And for me personally, I try to stick with as many of the default keyboard shortcuts as I can. So that way if I wind up on another computer like a PCAM or something like that, that isn't my personal computer, most of the keyboard shortcuts still apply. But there might be some that you find that just aren't in there. So I typed in enable in here, and there was a keyboard shortcut, but it was Shift Command E. I just felt like it wasn't gonna be fast enough. So I looked at what was on the E key. I felt like it was fine to get rid of. And so I took this enable here and I just dragged and dropped it onto the E key, and it set it to the E key. Now, if you wanna drag and drop it onto a key plus a modifier, all you have to do is light up that modifier down here, like for instance, Shift. And don't be afraid to lean on using the mouse. The keyboard shortcuts can be great, but I think it's kind of like a pretentious editor rite of passage to say, oh, I barely touch the mouse. I just do it all with the keys. Forget that stuff. My recommendation is pick maybe 5 or 6 keyboard shortcuts for things that you find yourself just doing over and over again here, like having to go up to the menu and back. If you find yourself doing that, maybe it's time to find a keyboard shortcut for that. But pick 5 or 6, focus on those. Don't worry about learning all the keyboard shortcuts. In fact, if you want to see a video of like my top favorite keyboard shortcuts, maybe I'll see if I can break that out into a separate video. So check the links below, see if I ever got that together. Okay, tip number 5 is about dealing with audio. So for so much of the stuff that we create at PCAM, and I've been creating here for these tutorials, we have 2 separate tracks of audio that come in. We're using our XD cams or Sony cams with the XLR adapter that gives us the ability to plug in 2 separate microphones. And I am a huge fan of doing that because it gives you a backup. In this case, I actually have a mic overhead and I have a Rode Mini wireless on. And that way, if something happens with one of these mics, I can resort to the other one. So let me drag a clip that I recorded into the timeline as it comes in as a default here. And you can see it's put the 2 separate microphones as one channel here. And when I play it, you can actually see on the meters that there's 2 separate things going on. If I want to manipulate those tracks separately in any way, I can't. Now there is a workaround. You would have to copy the second track, then right click it again, go to audio channels, and switch it to the other side, and you'll see that it still makes it 2 stereo pairs. So it's just kind of a messy way to work. So there's a way that I really like to set things up before I ever bring a clip into the timeline. So that's if we go back over to our browser here, I right click all the particular clips from that recording that I know have that same audio setup. And I'm gonna right click here, and again, this is before I ever bring it into the timeline. I'm gonna go to modify audio channels. You see it defaults to 1 stereo track with a left and a right track. Instead, I'm gonna make this mono with 2 tracks, and I click OK. And now if I bring a clip into the timeline, no matter how many times I bring it in or wherever I bring it in, it gives me 2 completely separate tracks that I can manipulate with each track of audio. And this just makes life so much easier. Okay, so sticking with audio for tip number, gotta get both hands out, 6 here. My little stand is rocking back and forth, but okay. That is synchronizing audio. Premiere put this in as a feature a few years ago, and it is fantastic. So if you have 2 different recordings that you did that you're trying to sync together, in this case, I have a screen recording that I did where I recorded the audio with the built-in microphone, and I have my clip that I recorded into the camera. You can see the audio looks pretty similar. So let's say we have our 2 clips here, and they're not quite in sync here. Now I could try to go in and manually line them up, but a much easier way is to use Premiere's Synchronize feature. So I'm gonna drag and highlight here, and then I'm gonna go to Clip and Synchronize. And then we're gonna pick audio, and it's gonna scan these waveforms and use that audio to determine how it should sync up. So let's go ahead and give it a try. We click OK, it processes it, and then bam, it just puts it in sync for us. It's a fantastic feature. Okay, we're gonna stick with audio again for tip number 7. This is a slightly more advanced tip, but it's really changed how I work. And so I wanted to put it in there, and that is to use EQ to help bring music down in your mix without losing volume. Okay, so let's say in my original assets folder here, I had a totally original clip made just for us at PCAM by our good friends Whitney Houston. Just a joke, you need to be careful with copyright, so don't actually use this song. And I wanted to just have a little bit of it going under me while I'm talking. Well, if I bring it into the timeline here, and I just start playing it, hey folks, Roland from PCAM here, and I just part 2 tutorial for SYNCHRONIZE. Now, it's gonna be way too loud. Now I can and should use the volume to bring it down a little, but if I actually bring it down low enough that it doesn't interfere with my vocals, it's kind of gonna be too low to appreciate. Tutorial for StreamYard. Now we have an initial tutorial. It's completely faded to the background. So we can go to our effects tab here and type in the word notch, and we're gonna grab a notch filter and drop it onto this music. And if we go to effects controls, you can see we get a little edit option here, and we can start to kind of scoop away little bits of the track. Kind of right where all these dots are clustered is usually the best bet. And the more you scoop away, the weirder it's gonna sound. But if we just take out even, this is actually a relatively extreme scoop, but if we take out some like that, you're gonna hear, this is it without the notch. Hey folks, Roland from PCAM here, and I just wanted to do a part 2 tutorial for StreamYard. Now, pretty distracting. Now if we put this notch filter on, but we don't change the audio. Hey folks, Roland from PCAM here, and I just wanted to do a part 2 tutorial. That audio is there, but it's been moved away from the spectrum where my vocals are, and it just creates so much of a better mix. So this has completely changed how I mix audio. Again, it's a slightly more advanced feature, but go ahead and just try playing with it. It's really worth it. All right, well, that's it for now. Our top 7, should I say it in the most clickbaity voice possible? Top 7 tricks for Premiere Pro. Be sure to leave your own here. We've got comments enabled on phillycam.org/blog in the forum, so you can touch base with us. Tell us which ones are working for you or what tutorials you want to hear about next. But in the meantime, thanks for watching.